Anybody here ever see me speak before? When we hacked into, was it Tom Rogers' voicemail? And stole Bruce's credit card. You'll get me back? Okay, good. Now's your chance. All right, we're not doing hacking today, but I'm going to show you some cool stuff that we're working on in the lab where I work. So this is an interesting thing. Humans didn't do so well as a species for almost the entire history of the universe. And then what happened is we solved a bunch of the problems that kept humans from thriving, right? And then we got this hockey stick growth curve not very long ago, just in the last like 500 years. Now there's billions and billions of them, more than you actually need. See if you can find yourself on this chart. So what we try and do in the lab where I work is invent new technologies that solve the problems that humans have. Because the one thing all those humans are good for is creating more problems. So this is the lab at Intellectual Ventures. We basically just bought one of every tool in the world, hired one of every kind of scientist, put them all on the same team, and then started going after big problems. And it turns out not very many people are doing that. Most people are busy trying to invent a faster, cheaper version of whatever they did last year. So we don't have a lot of competition. It's going great. This is our warehouse. We have another 8,000 tools that don't fit in the lab. But it's a way for me to cheat at invention, because I can just start working on a crazy idea and I have everything I need. We have everything here from scanning electron microscopes to ICBMs, depending on what kind of project you're working on. So this is a cubic mile of oil. And that's about how much energy we use to power planet Earth in the year 2000, right? That's a lot of oil. And today we use about 3.5 cubic miles of oil per year. So, 14 years of progress, 3.5 times as much energy. Amazing. We think we're going to get a lot more efficient. I don't know why, but let's just pretend for a moment that we're going to get a lot more efficient. So by 2035, we only need an additional 1.5 cubic miles of oil per year. That's the current projection. Now, because we're at some point going to start running out of oil, at that point we'll have to come up with 4 or 5 cubic miles of oil to replace that in some other form besides oil. So we imagine these new technologies, alternative energies. Let's get some solar panels and windmills and start trying to offset that stuff. But if you do the math, you figure out pretty quickly 1 cubic mile of oil is like the biggest windmills covering all the flyover states. That's a lot of windmills. And what happens is, now let's start putting them on the West Coast and the East Coast. But at some point, you're running out of places to put windmills. It doesn't really solve the problem at the scale that we have it with those billions of people and their energy needs, right? This stuff is amazing. If you take a can of Coors Light full of uranium instead of Coors Light, you get $12 million worth of fuel in one can. So we love this stuff. The problem is, there's a bunch of problems with it. The first generation of reactors weren't exactly safe. You have to do this complicated enrichment process where you dig fuel out of the ground and put it through centrifuges and try to enrich it so that you turn your U-238 into U-235, and people steal some of it and try and make bombs. You generate a lot of waste, which goes in these stockpiles, and we store that forever because we don't have any other ideas what to do with it. But here's what's interesting. We get 0.7% of the energy out, right? When you go through that enrichment process and then burn the fuel in today's reactors, you're putting 99.3% of the energy in the stockpile. Not very efficient. Now we don't care because we still get so much energy that it's working out. So we designed a new type of nuclear reactor that's powered by nuclear waste. That seems exciting, right? You take that stuff from the stockpile, we clad it, put it in a reactor core, and what happens is in our reactor, Well, this is, if you take those equations about neutron bombardment and run them through Adobe Flash, this is what you get. So this is how it works. So in our reactor, we light it up at one end, kind of like a candle. And it converts the fuel by enriching it with a leading wave. And then that second wave burns the fuel. So it burns from one end to the other over the course of, in this design, like 60 years, right? And you never have a critical mass of enriched fuel in your reactor. And you can shut down the enrichment plant. And you got no moving parts. And it's kind of a safe, modern reactor. It turns out nobody's been trying to design reactors for like 40 years. Everybody on our team is old and crusty and was our intern on the first generation of reactors. And we pulled them out of retirement. Or they're like kids that we just got out of college, right? There's nobody in the middle. And the first generation was designed with slide rules. We have Monte Carlo simulations and 5,000 core clusters to run them on, right? So that's your conventional reactor. In our reactor, we get the rest of that energy out. In a single pass, I can get about 20% of the energy out. This stockpile in Kentucky is 700,000 metric tons of depleted uranium. With that, in our reactors, we think we can power the entire planet, including growth, for like 1,000 years. And in that 1,000 years, maybe we'll figure out fusion. Okay, remember these guys? Brooklyn's 99%, the oppressed Americans. Well, see if you can find yourself on this chart. I think I'm probably in the blue part somewhere, maybe even the red part, doesn't matter. America's 99% is the top 14% globally. This is pretty interesting. You guys are like two-time lottery winners. You won the lottery once by becoming human, which is pretty good for a mammal. Like, we're not a lot of predators coming after you. And then you won the lottery again by being American, because you know, no matter how bad you've got it, you're still on the top 14%. That's a pretty good deal, right? Now, I'm not meaning to, belittle anyone's problems, but, I don't have actual problems of my own. My problems are like my battery dies too fast and shit like that, right? There are people with actual problems. If you have one of these guys in your pocket, an iPhone, the cost of that thing is equivalent to the global median income for a family, right? Most families in the world make as much money in a year as you spend on your iPhone. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. That's okay. The point is, you're creating an early market, we're developing these technologies, we're going to get economies of scale, and eventually they'll get them too, and their global median income will raise, right? That's okay. That's why it's all right to be an American. But in the meantime, these people have some real problems. This woman's loading vaccines into a $2 styrofoam cooler. She's going to fill it up with about $25,000 worth of vaccines, truck them across the Sahara. By the time she starts injecting kids, about 20 to 50% of those injections will fail because they didn't stay cold enough long enough, right? So we looked at this from a fundamental perspective and figured out we could make this kind of super thermos. This Dewar keeps vaccines cold. You can plug it, you can't plug it in, there's no power cord, but you can put vaccines in there, stick it in the sunshine, in the Sahara with no external power, come back 6 months later, and your vaccines will still be cold. Right? This styrofoam cooler, you get about 4 hours. You guys remember these pipe organ things? Well, okay. I'm old enough to remember pipe organs. These things are antennas, right? You pump air through it, and it resonates at a given frequency. And the little ones are high frequencies, and the big ones are low frequencies, right? This is kind of an interesting thing because, we don't do that anymore. There's no pipes in the thing that makes the music you listen to now, right? There's a computer chip in there, and it generates the waveforms that simulate the sounds that those pipes would make, and lots of other waveforms too. And it turned out that turned out to be a very flexible way to generate those waveforms and replace those analog antennas with digital ones. See these domes on boats? You know what's in there? It's a satellite dish. It's a physically steerable dish that can steer and aim at a satellite, right? So if the boat is moving around, it can steer and aim at the satellite. That's how you get to surf the internet on your yacht. And this is why you have crappy internet on airplanes, because the same thing is going on. And if you look at like a Predator drone, the reason it has that bullfrog shape is that there's a physically steerable dish in there so that kids in Nevada can control it with a joystick, right? That's what's going on. Well, it's important to talk to satellites, but we don't have any ideas of how to do it without steering a dish. So we looked at this and figured out using metamaterials, which is kind of a new area in science that we've been working on for about a decade, we could create a flat panel antenna that can electronically steer a beam with no moving parts. That's pretty exciting, because when you look at the way these things work, I can stick it on the back of a laptop or the roof of a car or a plane or a train and steer it to aim at a satellite. Now, that's important because the way that we do wireless communication these days is pretty crappy, right? We just have a omnidirectional antenna that broadcasts noise in every direction. It's raising the noise floor for everything else. And neither God nor Isaac Newton has created any new spectrum for us lately. So we have to get smarter about how we reuse it. So with an antenna like this, what I can do is steer a beam and say, aim it at an LEO satellite. Those guys are whizzing by. You know, geostationary satellites, 400 milliseconds away. That's useless. LEO satellite, 25 milliseconds away, but you got to steer a dish to talk to it. Every new satellite we put up these days has more wireless communication capacity than the entire satellite network had last year, right? See if you can find yourself on this chart. The lit up spots, that's where the internet is. Now, where are the people? You know, I'm guessing you live near a lit up spot. Well, most of the people live near the black spots, right? And that's because the way that we bring internet infrastructure is too expensive. Right now, we dig up the road to run fiber to a cell tower for its backhaul. But what if I put my antenna on the roof of a building and it talks to an LEO satellite? Or I stick my antenna on the side of a building and it talks to your phone, and I make a new beam for you and you and you and you, and I'm reusing the spectrum. We can bring gigabit wireless to everyone on the planet this way, right? Get those people online, and they'll figure out how to solve their other problems. That's it. That's all I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to be hanging out for the rest of the weekend. Please come harass me and tell me why I'm full of shit. And I would love to talk to you about your projects as well. Thanks.